Hello and welcome to the Teacher Jab channel. Today we're going to be looking at great thinkers of the world and specifically the ancient philosopher of Confucius, or in China known as Confuzi or Master Khan. Confucius is considered to be an ancient philosopher. A philosopher is someone who studies the world around them and really deeply ponders what is the greater meaning to things, or considers why a lot of things happen. And Confucius really looks into the idea of family structures and government structures. We're going to talk a lot more about him in this little chapter today. We're also going to be talking about the Analects, which is a primary source of Confucius's writings. A fun fact about that, Confucius did not write any of the words within the Analects. They were taken down by some of his followers. Which is a pattern we've noticed with other great thinkers of the past, also with some other religious leaders. Also within today's chapter, we're going to look at the new social and family structures that Confucius suggests, and we're going to be comparing him to an earlier thinker that you might remember. His name was Hammurabi. And if you want to know what Confucius looked like, here's a picture. He was considered to be a teacher and a philosopher, and is well known throughout the world for some of his ideas about philosophy and family structure. Let's try erasing this again. Oh, it's not working. So I'd ask you to take these notes down, as we're going to be talking about his idea of morality and what that really means, or the idea of correctness. I'll wait while you take things down. So please pause the video. Welcome back. A little bit more about Confucius. His father was a famous military officer, but died at quite a young age. His mother also was a well-known artist, but she also died about the age of 40. Confucius then married his wife at age 19, and then began to attend Chinese schools, learning about the 6 rites, which he would study religion, writing, or more specifically, calligraphy, also music, charioteering, and archery. These are the traditional schools of thought within ancient China, and he was considered to be highly educated even as a very, very young man. Looking at this image here, you can see Confucius seems to be a little older and a little wiser, and also a little more obese than what you might see of someone of that time period. We don't exactly know what Confucius looked like, but within this image you can see that he is of an older age, and also he's quite well taken care of himself. So this image is showing him to be a bit old and a bit wiser than your average Joe, you might say. Moving on, we're going to do a bit of an unsum, and you're going to underline important things, circle things you want to know more about, of course, summarize or bullet your ideas next to the slide, and I want you to draw some arrows to any connections you might see within the text to text, or text to an image, or text to some other unit. So we're going to be reading this slide and looking at Confucius and society. So I ask that you please pause the video while you read. Welcome back. And you might have noticed that Confucius was looking at the idea of people's lack of indecency. And he thought this was the major reason for some of the factors that caused a lot of civil strife within the Zhou society. And he felt that people needed to look back to moral values and return to the ways the people had lived long ago. Looking at family structures and also within governments, you call this idea Confucianism. Confucius believed that there were proper roles in society based on your rank and also based off of your place in a family. As you can see at the bottom here, these 3 bullets. Children should obey or display high moral values. And children should respect and obey their parents. So the father really functions as a role model, displaying the highest values, and children follow the role of their father. Basically, everything that Confucius really bases his philosophy also off of is the idea of respect. You must respect your governance and respect your elders, especially your father. Moving on to the next slide. Looking at the ideas of governance now, and I'm going to ask you to please pause the video, but I want you to relate what you learned from the previous slide with what you're seeing here. Please pause the video. So he brings up the idea that moral leadership, or that being a role model, really should bring order to a society, not laws. He also thinks that the king really should act kind of like the father for the entire country and be that great lead example. And the lower class should follow the examples of their superiors. And Confucius really relates the same idea of family structure. You might think of the lower class people being more like the children, and the higher class or kings being like the parents of that larger family. Moving on to the next slide. I'm going to ask you to write a really short paragraph, maybe just a couple of lines, and a reaction to this reading here. And I want you to put it in your own words. So some of the words here might be a bit tough, but I want you to try and look at the context clues around them to write your own paraphrased paragraph next to this short reading here. And this is from Confucius's The Analects, which I mentioned before. So after you read this, please rewrite it in your own words, and please share it with someone near you. And then you can restart the video. Please pause the video. Hopefully you had a moment to share your ideas with someone next to you. And I just want to review a couple major points before we move on. Confucius believed that people should look for other examples for moral virtues. And the big idea behind that is respect, but also having a sense of shame. Having a belief that you should do the right thing for the sake of the right thing, or the idea of virtues. This is very similar to what the Greek philosophers thought, that being Socrates and Plato, having that sense of shame or moral responsibility within your society. So I'd say that's really the big idea, having a sense of shame or having a sense of responsibility for yourself and those around you. And that would lead to a more harmonious society, and maybe even a utopia. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But utopia meaning perfect society. So we'll spell that out. Utopia. My mistake there, but we're a little far along to delete this, so I'm going to continue anyway. Moving on to the next slide, we're going to be doing a couple of just a one responder question, and then we're going to get through another reading. So I ask that you please pause the video while you answer this question. Please pause the video. Hopefully you answered letter B, showing you have a high moral standard, or the best or most goodness, virtue, in a larger picture. Moving on. I'm going to ask you to please unsum this slide, and also please give it a title. Remember, that's something new we're working on. I want you to title these passages that do not have one, showing us the main idea of that little reading. So please pause the video. You might have noticed that looked a little more into the idea of the Analects, or the writing of Confucius' thoughts, and it looks at the ideas of morality, family, society, and of course, government. Confucius had a great deal to think about that, and he also was unique in that teaching is both a philosophy and basically a religious practice. He looks at the both as really one entity, and also looking at the idea of being moral or morality, doing what is virtuous, what's kind, and looking at the broader society instead of just looking at oneself. What I'd like to do now is compare Confuzi, or Master Khan, or Confucius, with Hammurabi. So you're going to do a reading of the Analects, and you're going to review some of Hammurabi's code. And I ask that you please fill out this little chart that compares both Confucius and Hammurabi. Afterward, you're going to review and share your answers with someone near you, and then we'll meet back to do some responder questions. So I ask that you please read all of the documents mentioned before and fill out this chart, and we'll meet back. Please pause the video. Welcome back, and I just want to review a couple major ideas. Both Hammurabi and Confucius looked at the greater part of society, but I would say a key difference between them was Confucius believed in having a sense of shame and following by example, while Hammurabi did not. He believed in the idea of punishment, and hopefully that is reflected in your work. I'm going to move on now to the responder question. And we're going to answer a couple of these, 27, 28, 29, and 30. And then we'll meet back, discuss the answers, and we'll see you in a bit. Please pause the video. Well, hopefully you've remembered going back to the readings that the Analects was Confucius's writings. Moving on to the next question. This is more about your opinion about something, and some might say that they had quite different ideas with the idea of punishment, as opposed to looking at the idea of virtues or following a good role model. Although that was an opinion question, I wanted to be able to explain what you thought, and hopefully you did during your discussions. Moving on to the next slide. Confucianism in traditional China served Chinese society by maintaining order in society. This is not an idea of a democratic government, as there was a king, so that couldn't really be. And the idea of wealth might have helped your rank, but not really showing the importance of social harmony. So A was the best answer there. And look at number 30. What concepts really seem to be the foundation of Confucian thought? And hopefully you came up with the idea of morality, this idea of having virtues. And perhaps D as well, because you're supposed to look at someone as a role model, someone a higher rank than you, or someone within your family who's far more experienced. And that's about all the time we have for today, looking at Confucius. And I hope you enjoyed our video today. And that's all for now. You guys take care. Bye-bye.